Got it. Welcome, everybody. I'm Kathy Rigling. I'm the Education Coordinator for Orange Audubon Society. And tonight we're going to talk about the Great Backyard Bird Count, which is coming up this next Friday through Monday, the 18th through the 21st, and how you can get your students involved in a very interesting and easy to do citizen or community science project. So this is a resource that I've created using some Cornell Lab of Ornithology and some resources from the Great Backyard Bird Count. Orange Audubon has lots of different programs, including a youth birding program that you can see in the middle. And I want to let you know all the photos in here I took, and these are birds in Central Florida. So we may have some South Florida people. Your birds might be a little bit different, but you have amazing birds down there too. Okay, this program was created with the support of the Cornell K-12 education program. And if you've not checked out their resources, you definitely should. I know you don't have much free time, but when you do, you're bored, check it out. They have a lot of good stuff. I used it. I'm a retired middle school science teacher of 35 years. And I've also worked as a nature coordinator at Wekiva Youth Camp. So I've used a lot of their resources. So definitely check out the K-12 education program, and a lot of their stuff is free. So community science, which formerly was called citizen science, is people everywhere reporting observations of natural events using basic scientific protocols. So it could be any kind of natural event. It could be birds. There's citizen science on frogs, on butterflies, on weather, on stars, you name it, they're out there. And you might be curious to know what these lights are. And when I first saw this, I said, oh, those are just the world at night. Well, doesn't quite make sense because the world is not at night all the time. What this is a capture from the eBird website when they took into account the eBird report sent in over one of the Great Backyard Bird Count weekends. And each little light is an eBird report sent in by somebody around the world. And of course, the United States, we put in a lot, so does Europe. But check this out, even people out on islands or probably in boats out in the ocean, they were birding too. So this is pretty amazing. The only place that's not showing would be Antarctica. So why community science for your students? And I think it's really, really valuable. It's exciting. It's real world. It's authentic. It's not like, oh, we're just reading about this in the book. They're helping to contribute to science. It's an opportunity to study wild animals outdoors. It sparks their curiosity. You teach STEM content, and it does meet science standards. And also you can pull in math standards if you start to crunch the data, you can do that. It's helping the animals. It's motivating to the kids, and you connect to the scientific community. It's got a lot of pluses, and I have used it. I did eBird with my students for about the last 4 years that I taught. So why birds? And no, I didn't take these pictures. I wish I've seen all these birds, but I haven't. But aren't birds amazing? They're just amazing. And so birds from around the world, though we do have scrub jays, indigo buntings, robins, Baltimore orioles. We have a lot of these. Okay, so why birds? So if you're not used to observing birds, you might say, well, I don't see birds. But you have bird blindness, because once you start learning how to pay attention to birds, they're everywhere. Does this remind you of a movie? Anyways, you will start noticing in your students in particular, because they got such sharp eyes and ears, they'll really start to notice, like when you're walking, outdoors, like to PE or something like that, they're going to start noticing. So anyone can learn to identify their local birds with the help of some resources and practice. It's very possible, and your students will learn, especially those that get really interested. This is going to spark something in them. So the Great Backyard Bird Count, here are some steps to take before the count starts on the 18th. And like I said, here's the website, birdcount.org, and Susan can put that in the chat because they have resources too. So if I go too fast and you want to have something you read, they have directions on eBird and Merlin. It's all there too. So they have a lot of good resources. But I know time is not something that as teachers you have a lot of. So if you have time, it's a good thing to look at. So before doing the count, which would most likely be Friday, unless your school does meet on Monday, the 21st, you want to look around your campus for places that provide either food, water, or shelter for birds. The school I was at today, lots of great trees. And guess what? The trees had some berries and there actually was some birds in there. We were just doing a little pre-teaching out there. And if you can find those places, you're more likely to find birds there. Decide on a time to count. Now, your hands are tied on a lot of things, but if you could count in the morning, you're going to see a lot more activity because birds are most active. It's like us. We wake up, we're starving. We say hello to everybody. So the birds are doing the same thing. They're communicating to each other. You can hear them. They're moving around. They're looking for food. They're looking for places to hide. And so you're more likely to see them. And here's our state bird, the northern mockingbird. Okay, the next thing you need to do is create a free account on eBird. And you can just have a school account if you want to. You don't have to have an individual one, but you may get hooked on birding. I was saying that's kind of how I got in. I started with just wanting to do eBird as a project at school to get kids involved in citizen science. And well, the rest is history. So here's the eBird website. And right here, you get started. And again, if I go too fast, the Great Backyard Bird Count website, step-by-step on how to set up an account. It's really not hard. And the cool thing is when you set up your account, which is basically right here, choose a username and a password, you get access to all of these things. Bird Academy, they have a lot of free like classes that are just self-paced. They even have an eBird one. They have Birds of the World, Celebrated Urban Birds. They have the Great Backyard Bird Count. Macaulay Library, if you need any photos of birds and sounds of all kinds of animals, like even whales, it's in there. So you have access to a lot of different things. And it's the same username, password works for all of them. Okay, choose a resource to use to identify birds on your bird count. I recommend Merlin. Merlin has been out here for, I think, I don't know, at least about 5 years. It's been well tested. It is very user-friendly. It would be an app on your phone. If you don't want to bring, I know how you might feel about having your phone out with students. So if that is not a good thing, then you can do your list later on a computer and you can do a paper list. Okay. Oh, sorry, that was Merlin. So Merlin is ID. So you could use, if you don't want to use an app in the field with your students, you could use a field guide. But the app is a lot easier. But there's great field guides out there, and there's even some that are geared to students. So you can find those. Okay. Teach your students some basics of bird identification. The basic things you want to teach them to look for is size, shape, color, and behavior. Now, there are other things to look for, but that gets too in depth. And for beginners, this is all you need. And do realize when you do your count, you're not going to be able to identify everything, and that's okay. Even scientists don't identify everything. So one of the big things you look at is how big is the bird? So you can talk about in your classroom the different size markers we use. So the tiniest one would be like a sparrow. You could show a picture of a sparrow. This size is a robin. So, and then the next size, most students know what crows are, and most students know what geese are. So they think about the bird that I saw, how big was it? If it's flying up and high in the sky, it's kind of hard to tell. So that might be one that you're not going to be able to identify if it's up high in the sky because you really can't tell. Now, I love this graphic. And this, I believe, is available on the Cornell website. But you can tell your students, I bet you know more about birds than you think you know, because these are some of the main families of birds. I was in a classroom today and I just asked the students, they said, well, what's number one? They said, oh, it's a woodpecker. Most students know what a woodpecker is. And of course, most everyone knows what an owl is. And this one is a bird of prey. Then we have our ducks. We have our geese, which in Florida, unless you're in North Florida, you're probably not going to see a native goose. And we have our gulls. Also have your students, when you're out in the field doing the count, try to notice what are the main colors they see, the main colors, like it's probably about 3 main colors, and take note of that. And think about, what was the bird doing? You might have feeders at your school. That'd be a great place to do your count. Or maybe you have a pond or a lake nearby. If not, go where there's some trees, check the ground. Maybe there's birds on the ground. Maybe they're in the trees or bushes. You most likely have some fencing around your school. Often birds will like to perch up on the fence. Or of course, everyone always will have soaring or flying birds. Okay. If you use the Merlin app, what I just went through, the app goes through that with you. It asks you those questions, and then it generates a list of birds. If you don't have the app, then you're going to have to kind of I would get used to a field guide if you're going to go that way. So you kind of know how to look through the field guide to find birds. Some of the real basic field guides for beginners actually have them grouped by color, which is really nice. So, if I was using Merlin and I saw the other day, I was looking out my window and I saw a brown bird with gray, and I put in Merlin, I put it was small, and I put that it was on the ground, and it came up with these possibilities. Now I can tell you why. Yeah, I said, why would it give me a black bird? Well, because the female of this bird is brown. And so that would make sense. And so if I was doing Merlin, I could click on the one that I think it is, and you can click on how it sounds. You can look at a map of where it is. And if it's your bird, you can click, this is my bird. So for your Great Backyard Bird Count, you can decide whether you're going to use eBird or Merlin. Now, if you have really young students, probably at 2nd grade younger, you might want to just use Merlin to do your bird count. So you literally can use Merlin, go through the ID, and then if I'm going to go back one, and you say, okay, this is my bird. Well, when you click that, as long as you have an eBird account, you can say, identify with Merlin, and it'll generate a report, and you've reported that bird and you've participated in the Great Backyard Bird Count. To be more scientifically accurate, if you have older students, I recommend that you report it on eBird. Merlin would just be used as a way to identify, but not to report. But you can report on Merlin. Okay, so again, you can use field guides if you don't want to use Merlin. So prior to the bird count this weekend, one thing you might do if you have time in your busy schedule is you could assign students or groups of students to become an expert about one of your local birds. And here's some examples of what the students did. The teacher had them describe different things and draw pictures. And, you know, once you become an expert, then you've learned it really well, and then you can help others. So on the day of the count, they might say, oh, I see, that's a blue jay. That was my bird. And they can help the other students identify it. Here's an assignment that one school did. They had to write the name of their species in a large font, create a scientific drawing showing field marks, which would be things like, you know, circles around their eyes or stripes on their wings. They would listen to sounds. So like if most students have digital devices. There's websites you can go to and you can listen to it so they can learn what it's going to sound like. So that's just an idea you could do if you have time before Friday. All right, to generate a list of common birds in your area, instead of Googling it, If you have Merlin, what you do when you open up the app, there's a feature that says Explore Birds. Then you hit the slider to set right here, local seasonal settings. It'll say all birds or local, and you can hit it to local, and then it's going to generate your most local, your birds found this time of year, because it'll change. And here are some of Central Florida's most common winter birds. And if that sounds too complicated, if you email me and tell me your location, I can look those up for you. So this is Central Florida. These are some of the common ones for wintertime. And if you're wondering what this is, it's just a bar chart of when they're found. If you notice, red-winged blackbird, osprey, common gallinoo, great blue heron, and hinga, they're all year. But notice the palm warbler and yellow-rumped, there's no markings here because they go north. They're like, we're not going to deal with this hot weather. Okay, prior to the count date, decide how you're going to submit your data. You can use Merlin, but remember, you would only record one bird at a time. And so it's only going to record species, not numbers, but it's still really good. And your students are participating. Or you could use eBird, where you're going to submit one list for your location, and you're contributing in a more scientific way. Okay, for both options, you do need to create an eBird account on the website for eBird. You can't do it in the app. Okay, so again, just to review, if you're going to do Merlin to identify your birds in the field and report them, you're going to go through the steps of Start Bird ID, and it's going to ask you the size, the colors, the main colors, and what it was doing. And so in mine, because I'm very lucky, I was looking out the window and I had a blue, green, and red bird. And so when I put the option, it came up painted bunting, because that's really the only blue, green, and red bird that would be found in my area. And so I clicked on it. And so this is the painted bunting male. And I clicked, this is my bird. And see, you get this option that you can save it with Merlin. Now it says take me to eBird, but if you're doing a scientifically more accurate count, don't put an eBird yet. You do your whole list, and then I'll show you what to do. So this is if you're reporting with Merlin. If you have younger students, this would be perfectly fine. You could show the students, oh, look, we figured out what it was, and now we're going to send it to the scientists, and they'll be perfectly happy. And you've done some citizen science. You've started them on that wonderful road. Okay, now to use eBird, you need to get the app. Well, you don't need to, but it's a lot easier. You could do eBird on your desktop. If you use the app, it's going to take care of your date, your time, your location, your distance. You don't have to worry about keeping track of that. And you can submit it from your device. You can also use the website, but you will have to track the date, the time, the location, and the distance. And for distance, you're going to just estimate it. And it's probably not going to be very far, maybe 1/10 of a mile, or maybe you're just stationary. You call that a stationary count, or you're just in one spot. So for the actual bird count, what do? You're going to count birds anywhere for at least 15 minutes. And this name is a little deceiving because it doesn't need to be in your backyard. You can count anywhere, the schoolyard, you can count a park, you can count, wherever you are. So let students know that it's gone beyond the backyard. You can count longer than 15 minutes if you have that time. That's great. Keep of the track of time. If you're using eBird, it'll do it for you. And give the best estimate on the number of individuals of each species. So a whole bunch of crows might fly over you. You're not going to be able to count them all, and you're just going to have to estimate. And what we do as birders, we'll just look at the big flock and we'll try to do 10, 20, 30, 40. It's not going to be perfect, but scientists understand that because they do it too. All right, you can count any bird that's wild that you can identify by sight or sound. That means if you live by a farm, your school is by a farm and there's chickens, don't count the chickens. But if it's a bird like a peacock and it's wild, it's not belonging to anyone, you can count that. If you're in South Florida and you have parrots, which have become established, you can count those too. But if you get a bird like this, I was out the other day and this really interesting bird landed and it was backlit and it wasn't making any sound, I didn't record it because I had no idea what it was. And that's okay. Birding etiquette. Let your students know. If you're watching a bird and you're lucky to be kind of close and its behavior changes, you're too close. You want to just watch the bird and just see what it's doing. Today we were out and the robins were eating berries and the students all got to watch that robins eating the berries. And so they didn't change their behavior because we weren't too close. If you're lucky enough to where you have a place that has a trail, remind them to stay on the trail and off private property. If you're fortunate enough that you actually see a bird nest with a bird in it, which is possible for a bird of prey or an owl, don't go very close because that could present a danger to that actual birds in the nest. And if others are viewing a bird, let your students know, because maybe multiple classes will be out at the same time. Tell them to be really quiet. And actually, when you're doing your bird count, this is the time they really need to be quiet so they can be listening for birds. We tell students, listen, if you hear birds and you turn in the direction of the sound, and you try to see if you can identify it. All right, this is the really cool part. And I used this when I was teaching. When you submit your data, you should watch the live map on the Great Backyard Bird Count website. If you're doing Merlin, you won't be able to do that. But if you do eBird and you create a list and you wait till you go to the classroom to submit it, have this map pulled up, which is on their website right here, birdcount.org. And it'll be live and you'll see little yellow flashes as people submit data. So tell your students, say, find on Florida, find kind of, we south, we central, or we north. And when you find it, say, okay, we're going to submit our list. And you submit the list on your device. And within about 15, 20 seconds, you're going to see a light go up from where your location is. And it becomes real to the students. They're like, wow, the scientists have got our data and it's awesome. So I highly recommend doing that. All right, so I'm going to give a quick tutorial on using eBird mobile if you decide to do that. And again, this is on the birdcount.org website too in written form. And don't be intimidated. Don't be afraid. Say, oh gosh, if I put something in there that doesn't belong, it's okay. They'll just send you an email and they'll say, did you really see this? And you may, oops, I didn't really see a penguin. So especially in the Great Backyard Bird Count, a lot of new people are doing it. And the people at the lab are excited that you're doing it and mistakes will happen and it's part of science. So use the app. You hit start checklist, okay? And it'll start recording for you. And it will already have the date and the time. And then up at the top is the location. It'll auto select and you can just click that. If you're at like a park or something, you can look and there'll be what we call hot spots that have these little flames. And if you're at a park, use that hot spot. But if not, just click where the GPS says, that's all good. And once you do that, you're going to see the list of birds and they are organized taxonomically by how they're related, evolutionary way. So here's a hint because you're not going to want to scroll through, oh my goodness, we saw, a cardinal. You're not going to want to be like looking through the list and that's just too much work. So here's what you do. All right, let me see, I didn't show there. See here where it says add observation. If you type the first few letters of the bird's name, like let's say you saw a mallard, you type in M-A-L, it's going to pop up the word mallard, okay? And then you can enter how many you've seen. And if your fingers click too many, you can just backspace and make that go away. I do want you to notice if you click on the bird, Merlin is connected to it already as long as you've downloaded it. So you can click on Merlin and make sure that it's what you saw. All right, here's the easy way. So let's say I found a goldfinch, which you might find. If I type in GOLD, it's going to come up with goldfinch. And then I can just click to the left side and it's going to tell me, I'm going to add in how many I've seen. And if I put too many and be like, oh my gosh, my fingers just hit too many, you can click on that word and go back to that previous screen, and you can change that number. Okay, if a bird has an R by its name, okay, that means it's rare for your location. Now, it might just be because it's the wrong time of year for it to be there. And it might really be there, okay? So one day I was somewhere and these Canada geese flew by, like, whoa, Canada geese. Well, they're rare for our area. So I did type in Canada goose. And then I did if you really do see something rare, great. All you got to do is you got to put a little description. So what my little tip for this, you can look on Merlin and look at their description and kind of use that, or on a field guide. If you're lucky and you're taking pictures that day and you get a picture of that bird, you can put it in. But this is kind of advanced stuff, and most likely you're not going to see a rare bird, but that could happen. And it's really exciting if it does. When you finish your bird count, you're going to click review, and you'll see the whole list. You're going to make sure you didn't accidentally put something in, which happens to me a lot. And you can just take it out. And then if you forgot to put a location, it's going to prompt you to do so at that point. And once your list is ready, click submit. But remember, you might wait till you go in the classroom. And you see right here where it says, oh, you can put how many kids in your class are here. If you want, on the checklist comments, you can put, your school name, bird count for your school name, or you don't have to do that. You will put yes. Are these all the birds you were able to identify? It's okay if you can't identify all of them. If you put no, they can't count your list. So just put yes, you did your best, and it's going to count. So remember to wait to submit it to the Great Backyard Bird Count website so your students can see the magic of their data getting recorded. If you are lucky and you get to do multiple bird counts throughout the day, just do a separate checklist. If you have different classes going out, just start a new one. And that's fine. You can have a lot. Us birders, we put lots of lists in. And if you really enjoy doing this and you want to do one at home with your family over the weekend, feel free. You can go to a park and find all kinds of stuff. All right. So I'm going to answer questions at this time. And also I have my contact information, and let you know that we are recording this. And if you want the link, email me. And I would also like to encourage you, if your school does this, can you email me and tell me how it goes, and maybe tell me how many classes participated and how many species you saw? That would be really wonderful, so I can let the lab know. And I am going to offer future trainings on other topics, so I will email you now that I have your information. So at this time, we'll stop the recording, Susan. Okay.